This is the Archaeology of the Ending of Civilization Part 3. The Romans. The Romans in the West anyway, up until their collapse with the fall of Rome and the last Roman emperor in the West in AD 476. So tonight I'm going to take the unusual step of looking at the overall picture that is given to us with the ending of the Roman Empire in the West. And one thing that we've got to really do is start at the beginning of the end of the Roman Empire in the West. It all begins with this map in front of you. All the red areas are the territory of Julius Caesar. The empire of Julius Caesar as we see it before his death in 44 BC, we'll call it an empire, was more of a overall owned dictatorship that Julius Caesar had become. He wasn't a republican leader, he wasn't an emperor, but it's akin to the empire that Augustus would rule over at the start of his reign, 28 BC. As we delve into this, let's look at our history. The Romans called the people who lived outside the Roman Empire barbarians. In the 300s CE, AD 300, the Roman army had considerable difficulty in stopping these barbarians from entering the Roman Empire. By the end of the 300s, the empire had already been divided into East and West. The Romans in the West were forced to increase the size of their army. By the end of the 300s, it had grown to, some believe, 600,000 combatants. Of these, 250,000 were stationed on Rome's northern borders, with garrisons in Britain in that number. Taxation had to be increased to pay for this large army. These taxes were higher than most people could afford and created wide-scale poverty. Some people were forced to sell their children into slavery, while others died of starvation. Plague also became a problem, and during one outbreak, people in Rome were dying at the rate of 5,000 a day. The population of the Roman Empire began to fall dramatically, and this in turn reduced the numbers of people available to join this dwindling army. The growth of Christianity both in East and West, particularly in the West, created problems for the Western Roman Empire. Large numbers of Roman citizens became monks and refused to get married and have children. This not only contributed to the fall in population, but also reduced Roman tax revenues. Some Christians claimed that Jesus had preached non-violence. Christians who interpreted the words of Jesus in this way often refused to join the Roman army. Even citizens who were not Christians were reluctant to join, and emperors were forced to recruit slaves, gladiators and criminals, and many barbarians from outside the empire. It was also decided to employ varying individuals who were not aligned to this Roman ethic, these being many of those said barbarians. This created long-term problems as the barbarians did not always remain loyal to their Roman paymasters. And undoubtedly the barbarians were fighting barbarians, brother against brother, but as we know through history, is not always the done thing. Some Roman citizens, upset by heavy taxation and suffering from poverty, formed themselves into an armed resistance group called the Bargardai. This movement started in Gaul, modern-day France, in 283 CE. But during the 300s and the 400s, this movement has spread to other parts of the empire. These groups of rebels attempted to set up their own independent states within the empire, but the Romans, with the help of barbarian mercenaries, were eventually able to crush them, but the damage had been done. However, with the Roman army spending more and more time suppressing its own citizens, it became easy for the Germans to defeat those guarding the frontiers. Between 406 and 419 CE, the Romans lost a great deal of their empire in the north and west to different German tribes. The Franks conquered northern Gaul, modern-day France. The Burgundians took eastern Gaul, also modern-day France, while the Vandals replaced the Romans in Hispania, Spain. The Romans were also having difficulty stopping the Saxons, the Jutes, the Angles and the Franks from overrunning Britain between the late 300s and 476 CE. It was believed that many parts of the Roman Empire at this point, after the 400s, were seeking to their own defence, to organise their own provinces, still within the Roman ethic, and this we can see with some of the provinces in Roman Britain. At this stage, after just around 410, Britain was seemingly divided into 7 provinces, each with a governor, a military general, and the Duke of the Eastern Shore coastline. Alaric, a Visigoth leader, took part in several campaigns under the Romans. However, when he did not receive the expected promotion in the Roman army, he led his people against the empire and also took with him those Roman soldiers that did not agree with the rulership of Honorius, who was then the Roman emperor. Alaric now demanded that the Visigoths should have their own independent state. In 410 CE, Alaric's army, with large sections of the actual Roman field army once loyal to the executed Roman general Stilicho, who was executed in 408, was strong enough to enter Rome. Roman slaves joined the Visigoths and the Roman soldiers in attacking, or more likely fairly peaceably I should say, entering the city. Rome destroyed Rome, because Alaric, who was classed as a Roman, he had Roman soldiers with him. It was only Rome that could destroy Rome. That happens with all great empires. Alaric was believed to have had at least 40,000 men at that time. I believe myself, fundamentally, that Alaric didn't sack Rome in the way that many historians have said. You can see in the variety of slides in front of us. In fact, 40,000 men taking on a population of 1 million people in Rome would have been a task which wouldn't have been achievable. That would mean that each of his men would have to kill 20 citizens of Rome, many of them armed, many veterans and many aware of conflict. After Roman eventually around the Roman Empire after 410, in gaining the tribute of Rome, they ended up, the Visigoths, in parts of the western Roman world, including Hispania. In 435 CE, Gesseric and his Vandal army captured Rome's African provinces. As Rome relied heavily on African food, this was a serious blow to the survival of the empire. From his base in Carthage, Gesseric was able to launch sea raids on Rome. In 455 CE, Gesseric was strong enough to invade Rome and plunder the city. In the years that followed, the Romans also lost southern Gaul. It now became clear that it was only a matter of time before the Roman army would completely be defeated, and the barbarians who had been recruited into the Roman army began to desert in large numbers. Finally, in 476 CE, Ordaca, leader of the barbarian mercenaries in the Roman army itself, overthrew the legitimate and last Roman emperor Romulus Augustus, and installed himself as king of Italy. The Roman Empire in the West had come to an end. However, for a further 1,000 years, the Eastern Roman Empire would be ruled from Constantinople. It continued until 1453, when Mehmed II captured Constantinople, that the Byzantine Empire, as it became known, ceased to exist. And that will be the issue of another video in the next few weeks. Thank you for listening and watching these slides. Hopefully they've been of some illustration use and the use of my voice. Thank you for taking your time to spend this time with me on channel 01 to 1975. This is Karl-James Langford. Have a good night.